morning, Tarek. Welcome to IFM.
Good morning, Rev. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to be here with you.
Me too, and very nervous as well, too.
No, calm down. That's fine. So, unlike what we plan to talk about, I want us to talk about your participation in sports for Ghana. What have you done? For people who might not know this part of you, tell us a little bit of your triathlete life, how far you've gone for Ghana, and how it feels to be who you are. I mean, all these things I read is you, busy life, but you still manage to do sports on the side. Talk to us.
Thank you. And I just wanted to clarify, I know I'm not technically a youth anymore since I'm in my 40s, but I did notice on your social media handles that it's young at heart as well.
Yes, listen, right? I think 6 years ago, our former president, John Mahama, redefined the age range for being a youth. And so you still qualify.
Fantastic.
You're still in there, yes.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. And it's on recording now, so I have evidence about it, right?
Yes.
But so what I wanted to say back to your question on sports, I actually got into sports pretty late. And it was actually at university, my second degree. And I had a friend of mine, pretty brilliant woman called Diana that we lived with together in the dorm, and her mother was the first woman to run the New York City Marathon. And I thought to myself, how wonderful and impactful is that? I think there were only 40 women at the time and thousands of men.
Nice.
And she ran in leather shoes. Imagine
What?
that. Yeah, because that's what people did back then. Women weren't technically allowed. So my friend, she suffered from a chronic disease, decided to run a marathon in ode to her mother. And as she crossed the finish line, suffering quite a bit, she looked at me, she touched her hand on my shoulder, and she said, "You can do it too."
Wow.
And I'm a nerd. Okay, you guys, you already heard exactly. I was that weird kid at school that read books all the time. I was friends with the teachers, not with other children, right? And so when she threw that challenge at me, being a very extreme person, I either do 1 or 0. I thought to myself, I never run before. I'll run a marathon. It's 42 kilometers. And within a year, I did that. I ran a marathon. And it's quite interesting because I was in my early 20s at the time, and it was a London marathon as well, too. And I went to run several marathons after that. It was really interesting because we don't really do long distance stuff at school. At the time doesn't allow you to. Who says go for a run for 3 hours, right? In your lunch break. And it was something that I realized was very important to me, and it really helped me quite a bit because it's my form of meditation. Long distance sports is very important to me because it gives me clarity. When I have bad days, and we all have bad days, I live very close to the university here. I drop everything. I go to Legon. I park my car, and I just run laps around the university. I come back. I might not have solved the problem, but you just feel optimistic about it because, it releases endorphins. So that's sort of why it was so important to me, and it was quite incredible at the time to be involved as an athlete. And it became a thing. I became obsessed with it. I ran more, I swam more, I cycled more, and then of course when I moved back to Ghana, exactly 10 years ago, by the way, yesterday was 10 years since I moved back to Ghana, I decided to make a thing of it, to send the ladder back down, as people say. I was already in my 30s at the time. I marched into the National Sports Authority, met an amazing man called Bawa Fuseni. He looked at me and he said, "Who are you?" I said, I'm from Ghana. I'd like to race for Ghana. He was like, "How can that be?" I showed him my passport. He goes, "Okay, I believe you." What do you do? He goes, "Triathlon." And that was the sort of start of Ghana Triathlon. And what was really interesting, because under his leadership and under the leadership of the the Ghana Olympic Committee, a chap called Professor Francis Dodu, so he now teaches at Oxford, and before that he was at the University of Ghana. They kind of took me under their wing, and they sort of explained to me how, by putting the right principles and steps in place, you can actually grow a sport. Because we have great cyclists in the UK,
a lot of them,
but it didn't happen overnight. It was an investment that the government willingly did, 20 years ago. That's how early it started.
So someone just has to start.
Absolutely, and you have to give people opportunity. That's something that's very, very important. And you'll notice as this conversation progresses, everything I talk about is always about giving other people opportunity as well, too. Because I know that I'm very privileged, and the people who've been supporting me around me have given me a ton of opportunity and support over time, which is enabled me to flourish, which is important. And that's how we started. I remember, I was showing photos earlier on before we entered the room, but I remember having this sort of crazy idea of doing the first triathlon, which, by the way, is a swim, a bike, and a run, so it's 3 sports in one. And when I did Ironman, which I don't know if you guys know what that is, but it's a 4-kilometer swim, it's a 180-kilometer bike ride, followed by a 42-kilometer run. And you don't stop, by the way. You go through the whole thing.
That's like going to Cape Coast and back.
Yes. It's insane. And it's a long day. So we wanted to do a version of that called the sprint triathlon, which is a shorter distance. So it's a 750-meter swim, 20-kilometer bike ride, and a 5-kilometer run. The university, and under the help of Dr. Bello, who was the head of the sports department, allowed us to use the university. We didn't know who would come. I remember going there at 3 in the morning with Bawa. We had 3 rotten pieces of wood that people donated to us. As we cobbled them together to put a finish line, we realized that it was crumbling, so we went home, got some blue paint, started painting in the dark. And I remember when the sun came out, I looked like a Smurf. I was covered in blue paint. I had it in my hands. I had it everywhere as well, too.
And this was something new, so you didn't know what to expect.
And 9 people turned up, which was fine. It was 9 more than we expected. A chap who was absolutely incredible turned up, who actually ended up going to the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow and raced as a cyclist. He came, he had one leg, and he completed the race himself.
He did?
Yeah, he did. It doesn't matter what your background is, doesn't matter what your abilities are, everything is possible. And that's the beautiful thing about sports. But in the 4 years that I was involved with Ghana Triathlon, so we registered the association. It exists now. It's the governing body. We went to all the world congresses. I raced for Ghana as a national athlete as well too. The sports went from 9 athletes to 400 in the end. It was really quite incredible. We got sponsors like Kempinski, Cowbell as well too, and it was brilliant because the opportunity existed.
Exactly. Someone just has to do it.
Absolutely.
And when you do it, you need to see the growth from a different angle. I love what you said. You mentioned 9 more than what you expected. It means you really didn't expect anything, but then 9 people showed up, and then you saw it grow from 9 to 400 athletes. Out of that, someone actually went out of Ghana and then represented, beyond what you did.
Absolutely, and you have to be patient, and you have to be strategic, and you have to think in the long term as well too, and that's very important.
So these are the key words of what he shared with us. Tarek has shared with us just the first part of, the story. By the way, I want us to go back to your early days alive, your upbringing. Where did you grow up? Where were you born? What were your interests growing up? I know you're a book person, but did you have any particular career aspiration? What did you want to see yourself grow into? Tell us all that.
So you'll laugh. So I was raised in Kumasi. I'm first generation Ghanaian, but have mixed heritage, mostly Lebanese. My parents were born in Ghana.
Kumasi?
My
Which part of
grandparents,
Kumasi?
Ahunjo. So actually in Chiasso, then afterwards Ahunjo. And my parents were born in Ghana. My grandparents were born in Ghana as well, too. So I am fourth generation Ghanaian. And until 2006, I got my British passport. All I had was a Ghanaian passport at the time, which was always my superpower, I would say.
Wow.
And I remember growing up, I remember being that kid that was always curious. And I think with parents who are entrepreneurs, as you know, most Lebanese here in Ghana are entrepreneurs, they never thought I was strange in any way, even though I wanted to be an inventor. They encouraged it. So I was very lucky and I was very privileged because they gave me that opportunity, which, again, as I said, it's sort of what has carried through my values through life. And I remember sitting in the bathtub when my mom was bathing me, and I was mixing all the soaps and shampoos, and she could have easily been really upset at me, going, "What are you doing wasting shampoo?" But she asked me, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm inventing something, a new magical formula." She said, "Really? Okay, fantastic. What do you want to invent?" She encouraged me. And then for Christmas, she gave me a chemistry set.
Wow.
And she didn't question it. I was 9 years old. She didn't question it. My brothers wanted like a bike. All the other kids at school wanted something a bit more sporty, whatever.
She had seen something you wanted to do, and she was just being supportive.
And she encouraged it, and I was very lucky and privileged she was able to do that as well, too. Anyway, skip several years later, after I left Ghana to go to university in the UK, when I graduated from my PhD, which was in physics, but I have an engineering background as well, too, she came to visit me at the university, and I was sitting there in my lab coat with all the test tubes everywhere and the pipettes in my hand and blue liquids, and she looked at me, she goes, "Look, you're an inventor." And I never made that connection, but at the age of 9, that one gesture, that one act of kindness, where she could have easily slapped me on the arm and said, "Don't waste soap, don't waste shampoo," and she could have easily altered my career destination as well, too, but instead she encouraged me, and that was something that I was very grateful for, and I was very lucky.
Something I'm sure has stayed with you throughout.
100%.
I mean, in you giving back to the people around you, giving opportunities to them, when you spot and cite something, you want to understand it. Absolutely. And so you support it. By the way, that's a big connection, because I also grew up in Kumasi. I was born in Kumasi. I was born in Denyame.
Okay.
Spent most of my formative years in Edum, where the PZ cousins, Malcolm, those days, railways, Kijitia, around that side. It feels good to know, You know that. How often do you go back to Kumasi?
So, I mean, clearly very good things come out of Kumasi, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
very
that's
good.
the conclusion that we're coming to.
They can't even say nothing to us now at this point because, we're big force. You go back often?
I do. Whenever I can. Life is pretty busy. I've got my colleague Amanda here sitting next to me, and she knows we work from like 5 a.m. to midnight every single day.
Lovely.
So usually in the weekends I play catch up, just catching up on work. But when I can, I do. My middle brother absolutely loves Kumasi, and actually my younger brother too. And my dad goes back once or at least twice a month. So he sits on the board of Kumasi Golf Club, and so is quite active there as a golf player as well too. So we still have a very strong connection with Kumasi.
Perfect. You mentioned that you never did sports until you had that life-changing experience. Back in the States. I think it was in the UK.
It was in the UK.
In the UK. Great. What sort of things did you occupy your life with as a young guy? You obviously loved books, but I know beyond books, when you close, you would have a life. What kind of things did you try growing up? Did you try doing business? What sort of things did you spend your free time doing as a young guy?
So you remember those strange concoctions that I was making in the bathtub? I tried to sell them on the side of the road. No one bought them, though. I'm going to confess to you, because I tried to set up a business on the back of that.
I'm sure NBA didn't approve that. That's why.
Exactly. But again, my parents encouraged me to do that. The entrepreneur in me kind of started at such an early age. But what I wanted to say, though, is, and I was in a bit of a unique situation. So I didn't actually have the best of times at school. It wasn't until actually my second degree at university that I really started flourishing. And I'm saying this to all the misfits out there as well, because I was always a bit of an outsider. I was a bit of a loner. I skipped a year at school, and a year at the age of 8 is a big impact. You're not friends with somebody that's a year above you. It's always your age. So being in a class where I was a year younger than everyone, it naturally made me put me in a situation where I was a bit of a loner. Now at our age, it doesn't really matter what age you are. You can be friends with people from obviously different generations and stuff. So that actually forced me to focus, I would say. So books became my friends, my teachers became my friends. It made me kind of curious about everything around me as well too. And then I left Ghana at the age of 12. That was a very difficult period, because when I left Ghana to the UK, because of our great education system here, I actually also skipped another year when I got to the UK. So I ended up at university at the age of 16. So I started university at the age of 16, which was very, very young as well too. So I had a bit of a loner childhood. It was mostly spending time with myself, spending time reading, spending time with family friends, people that came over as well too, visiting from Accra, etc. But I really began flourishing when I started discovering who I was as an individual.
Exactly.
And sports and all that played a big impact of that. And that was in my early 20s.
Perfect. So you grew up in Ghana. Obviously, you have a strong Lebanese background. I mean, your family is from Lebanon. You were born here in Ghana. You moved to the UK at the age of 12. Totally different setting. I mean, if you grew up in Ghana, outside of Ghana, things are done in a different way. You travel out, and then now everything is different. People there who have the same color as you are different. They are not like the people you know. How did you settle in psychologically? What were some of the culture shocks, things you realized were different from what was here? How did you deal with the major ones?
So I'm gonna correct you on one thing, because here obviously I'm classed as white. I have to tell you, in the UK I'm not. I'm classed as Middle Eastern, which is basically brown. When I walk down the street, people don't really bat an eyelid because I'm quite fair-skinned. But when I open my mouth and they found out my name, all of a sudden I go into the other category as well too. So I struggled when I left Ghana. In terms of cultural values, the Lebanese, even growing up here as a Ghanaian Lebanese person, is very similar to Ghanaian culture. We're very community-based. We share our food. We welcome people into our homes. We celebrate Christmas on Christmas Eve, on Christmas Day. And one of the key pillars on Christmas Eve is, if you know any friend, any family member that's alone, you invite them over as well too. So it's very, very much entrenched around that, around other people, around supporting others, which is also Ghanaian culture as well too. It's a bit opposite in the global north.
Exactly.
So getting to the UK, where everyone was very formal, very proper, had a very I guess myopic mindset, especially when you're a child. Children are not very forgiving, as you all know, and want to define things. It was difficult. It was a struggle. It wasn't until I found my tribe, starting from university onwards, where I met people like Diana that I mentioned to you, where really I started to grow and flourish, and then started to miss Ghana for different reasons, not just because I was homesick, but because I wanted to reconnect basically with my culture as well too.
Perfect. I was expecting that, but you've given me inner insights into it. So we hear of young people, especially in the sports field, making great strides at their young age, and failing to keep their heads, down. But for you, the story is, relatively different. From how you speak and the things you've shared with us, you're level-headed, pretty much. You knew what you were going for, and you kept to it. What were some of the things you had to deal with as a young guy? I'm back to it again. And how did you keep your head up through all this? What kept you going? What was the motivation behind you wanting to achieve so much academically around the time? Because this is when you can be a young boy, go out, party, spend time filling your papers and all that. It doesn't seem to be your portion. How did you do it?
You can do both, and I did. I've got a colleague here with me, and she's probably smiling with the fact that you called me level-headed, because sometimes I can also be very pig-headed, and naturally with leaders as well, too. I think the approach that we take, because we're so passionate about what we do, and everything that we do is a very personal story, that's sort of what drives us. It's both, it's a double-edged sword. It's both a positive thing, because you need that grit, that tenacity, and that resilience to deliver, but at the same time, the impact and the implication there is, unless you have the right people around you that are advising you, it can also be a very futile exercise as well. What I wanted to say is that, it wasn't until university, this is my second degree, because I was 16 when I started my first degree. So when I crossed 18 that I started going out, but I still had those sort of introvert tendencies. So it's very easy for me to sit down and have a conversation with you all day till 4 in the morning. That's not a problem. But if you take me out and you put me in a club where it's very loud music and I'm a small person that has to nudge my way to the front of a bar to order a drink, that is not my jam. That is definitely not my jam, and it never has been. And that's just the way in which I've been wired. And so I think, just to your point that you were talking about earlier on, I think what's very important for me and what sort of kept me driven, it's not because I'm in a particular way. There's that nature versus nurture element. My brothers were raised like me. They're incredibly wonderful people. My whole family is. I'm very, very lucky. But I think what was instilled into me, especially since I left Ghana at a very young age, was my values. And it all starts at home. Your family values are very important. So my dad was always about, making sure you do things the right way. It might be the hard way, but it's the right way. Making sure you treat everyone with respect, because at the end of the day, when we leave this earth, we don't take our money or anything with us, right? We take our reputation, and that's it as well. And that was something that was very important. And it was how I was raised. And those sort of values carried through. So if I commit to something, I needed to ensure that I was doing it the right way. I would stick to my principles and my values. I'd have the right people around me that share those values as well too. That's very important, because often when you clash with someone, it's a clash of values at the end of the day. And then the third thing is, I think really trying to focus on the end goal and the end mission.
Exactly.
Because a journey from A to B is not a straight line. There are about 800 ups and downs. And there's always a curveball, whether it's a global macro crisis or a country crisis, or and I can see my colleague Amanda nodding here as well too. We've all faced before. Times are unpredictable and are tough. And if you know what you stand for, it makes it easier for you to weather through that storm, and that's very important too.
Sounds good. 29 past 11, Y107.9 FM. Phone lines are open. WhatsApp alone. If you have a question for Tarek, kindly send it through. He's with us right here. While we wait for your questions, Tarek, so at what point did you decide to venture into finance in your career journey? Because that sounds like a very big switch. From wearing lab coats to suddenly wanting to get into the financial industry. What were some of the sacrifices you had to make? You mentioned the end goal in your recent message. What was the end goal for you? What were you trying to achieve? How easy, seamless, or difficult was the journey for you?
Well, nothing was easy. I'm just going to start with that. And nothing worthwhile is easy as well, too. But there are huge connections between working in finance and what I did in the past. So the first thing I wanted to say is I've had a very accidental career. I've always been very curious about people and ideas. And so my entire life, I've always put myself in a very, I would always encourage myself to do things that I was not very comfortable with, because that's when you're tested, and that's when you're challenged, and that's when you learn and grow. And even now in my 40s, I still do that as well, too. Like being on this radio interview, my first one. So I think just to kind of take you through the career progression, when I finished my PhD, because I'm impatient. I can see Amanda nodding there again as well too.
Amanda knows it all.
She knows it all, and she lives it on a daily basis. Bless her. I actually finished my degree a bit early. I was sponsored by a venture capital fund, and so they actually asked me to do some postdoctoral teaching, but also support them in commercializing the product that I was working on, which was 3D printing. So I actually started the entrepreneurship journey quite early on, and you've probably already heard the word venture capital, i.e. I got invested in, and you can see that there's a tie between financial services and entrepreneurship as well too. This business was started with cash. We have, as Ghanaians go, we all have side gigs as well too. You might work for a bank, but you probably, sell potted plants on Instagram as well. We all have that element, and all that starts with capital, and it starts with access to growth, and that's very important. So, coming from a family of entrepreneurs, serial entrepreneurs as well too. As I left my academic degree and my academic career, I decided that what I wanted to do was support entrepreneurs. Made that transition into working for the hedge fund, as you rightly pointed out. It was just before the financial crisis. And by accident, when the financial crisis happened, my boss asked me, could you focus on banking and investing in banks? And then I realized the power of financial services. Because what does a bank do? It gives you access to capital, and it makes your money work harder for you, in theory, as well, too. And that was actually the start of the journey about 10 years ago when I decided to move back to Ghana and actually start the business that I've started, that I work with Amanda on as well, too. And that was really trying to look at financial services as a way of social and economic development and growth, and supporting individuals and small businesses as well, too. Because when the times are tough, as they are at the moment now across the whole world, not just in Ghana, a bank can really help you see your way out of that situation.
Perfect. So what form of opportunities did Delliote offer you? And what kind of impact did it have on your financial career?
So Delliote actually was the start of my financial career, and I worked for some incredible partners, and we focused on giving advice to private equity funds. And what it did is actually forced me to be structured. So what would happen is a boss would come up and tell me, we're working for this client, they're interested in making this acquisition, we need to get back to them in 4 days, can you take a look at a strategic plan for them? And it made you develop and structure your mind in a way that was frameworked and strategic, because every single business is the same. You have volume, how much you sell, and you have value, how much you sell it for, then you have a cost base, and then you have a profit, right? And as a result, it doesn't matter if you're a radio station or a bank or, that person who was selling pots.
Same things apply.
Same thing. It's always the same. And having that structure and framework in place, that financial modeling in place, being able to churn out these reports quite quickly, it put me in a very good position to think very strategically about businesses as well, too. And that's when, after being in Deloitte for a couple of years in London, in the London office, I then moved to work for a hedge fund because I had that mindset. And I was personally making within my portfolio about 100 investments a year. So it's a lot. That's an investment every 3.65 days, right? And I was not taking weekends off. I was working from 6 a.m. till midnight every single day. It was crazy. But it was you had to be agile, you had to be quick on your feet, you had to make decisions, and you had to build that experience very, very quickly. And I did that for almost a decade before moving back to Ghana. So all that, again, was out of coincidence. I met some amazing people at university that introduced me to these firms, and on the back of that got poached or hired as well too. And then a lot of my bosses in the past were actually who invested in the business that we run at the moment now.
That's perfect. I mean, they know your track record. They're familiar with how you work, and so investing is a no-brainer. I mean, if that's the right word to use. But anyway, how did the opportunity with GLG Partners also come about? You mentioned that it seems you keep the partners and you keep your clients connected throughout your entire journey. When the call came from GLG Partners, what did you have to consider before you said yes?
Like I said, it was all very accidental. So I was working at Deloitte at the time, and a friend of mine from university ended up having a connection with GLG. They asked him if they knew any sort of forensic investment folks that looked deeply into businesses, understood strategy and business projections and plans. They made an introduction to us at Deloitte. we ended up doing a small project for them because they were looking to acquire a business that they were investing in. And I didn't know that this was a test, basically, for my skill. And then the L and GLG ended up liking me and liking my CV in the way I thought, because it was different. And I was obviously quite tenacious and I would say maybe even stubborn. And then he ended up basically making me an offer, at which point I thought it would be wise to do it, because I always knew that I wanted to work on the investment side. And actually, because what does an investment firm do? They provide capital basically to businesses.
Well, still in line with your mission
and entrepreneurs. So I was getting closer and closer to that goal, which was very important to me. And that's how it ended up happening. And I worked there for 8 years. I did... it was really interesting because it was in 2006 that I joined. It was before the financial crisis, as you know, the global financial crisis that happened in 2008. Initially, we were looking at emerging markets, and I had a particular interest in Africa because of my background. And I knew the goal was always to come back and do something here, because you've already mentioned the Chatham House project that I was involved in on foreign direct investment and the impact it has on our continent. And the idea was, how can we use financial investments as a way of not just creating a return for shareholders, but also social and economic good. So we did some club deals. We did a deal with JP Morgan and a private equity fund called Helios. We bought a stake in the Angolan telecom company. We were doing a few kind of deals here or there as a way of structuring and building an Africa fund. Then, of course, the financial crisis hit, and that fund never saw fruition. And the L and GLG pair then offered me the role of working with the financials team to actually focus on financial institutions. And that's where my expertise on banking and banking strategy came through.
Wow. So after all these years, such beautiful success story, I see and sense growth in it. Perseverance, of course. Challenges came up, but you still jumped over them. At what point did you decide, okay, Affinity needs to come up? How many years did it take you to plan the entire idea, and how long did it take you to put it into action and to make it work? After that, I'll ask how you were able to put together that right team, or what you looked out for in putting together the team to help you achieve the dream of Affinity.
Thank you. Thanks for asking that question, because it's very important, especially for young and aspiring entrepreneurs out there. I actually want to start off by saying that, yes, on paper, I have been very successful, but that's probably 2% of what you see. Because, if you get onto my Instagram account, you just see wonderful stories, and of course, it's very curated and polished. What you don't see is the 98% of the time where you're in the office crying, when things go wrong and you have to be quick on your feet to actually set it all up. So it's not all that glamorous, but of course, we do celebrate the successes as well, too, and it has been a very long journey. I think what's very important in terms of the calling and why I decided to leave my job is, after several years of working in that one role, in a very difficult environment when the financial crisis hit and all my colleagues and my friends were getting fired, I thought to myself, I don't have a choice right now. I can't leave. The market is very bad. What am I going to do? I might as well stick and do this. I maybe did it for a bit too long, to be honest. I got a bit burnt out. And then it was actually my mother, again, back to my mother, such a big influence. She was visiting me in London, and she looked at me and she told me I was a bit intolerable. I was tired, I was cranky, I was complaining and moaning about my job all the time. And I then realized, back to that values thing, I had diverged so far away from what I wanted to do. And I remember it was setting up that Africa fund or having that impact. And the only thing I could do at that point, in order to break away from that hamster wheel that I was on, was to actually quit my job and take a break. And so after that visit that my mom had with me, I actually quit my job and I moved back to Ghana. Everyone in the UK thought I was crazy. Why would I leave? It was then the second largest hedge fund in the world, no longer the largest in Europe. Why on earth would I leave that role? And I have to be honest with you, it was just a calling. I felt like I needed to come back. I needed to remind myself why I started this journey in financial services. And the idea of Affinity actually didn't start then. I just got here with nothing. I was staying with my parents. I didn't know what I wanted to do. All I knew is I wanted to support entrepreneurs. That was it. That was my sort of overarching theme. And that, I don't know if you want me to get into a bit more detail around that. But it was random. I just told a bunch of friends from school, when I left school, to people who had come through Ghana, people from the alumni network at university. I just said to them, introduce me to interesting people. So I got all these introductions. I met a beekeeper. I was going up to Ho with him and into the National Forest, and I was putting beehives up at like 6 in the morning. believe it or not. It was crazy because I just thought it was interesting. You know, maybe I'll be a beekeeper, maybe I'll work in agriculture. But he was an entrepreneur, you know, and he was supporting a cooperative actually of about 600 women, which was also quite important as well too, you know, so that he was naturally having a lot of impact. What was really interesting about that story is that they were struggling. You know, we sell the gallons of the honey on the side of the road, as we know, the local honey that's dark. You will notice that there's a thick layer at the top. That's actually wax. And it's not unhealthy to eat, obviously, because wax is not a dangerous substance, but it actually prohibits us from exporting it. And what this gentleman wanted, basically, who had set up this cooperative of beekeepers, was a filtration device to remove the wax.
So it can.
So I invested. I put money into the business. I bought some equity. He bought this machinery. He was filtering it. It's not rocket science. You know, it was just an economic opportunity for him to be able to afford this growth capital. And as a result, he became the first honey producer in sub-Saharan Africa to have a license to export to the EU, which was amazing.
Yes, because you saw the opportunity in creating economic value when you invest in what will help them get rid of the wax.
It was his idea. It was a good business. He had good impact. He needed the money. I could afford to give him the money, so therefore I had to.
Then again, opportunities come to play.
100%. You know, out of that support network as well too. So, and there were many examples of that. I worked for a microfinance institution. I worked for a tech incubator as well too here in East Legon. I worked in I consulted for a payday lender. I consulted for a real estate fund that was doing affordable housing. There's so many opportunities on our continent, and especially in Ghana as well too. It was really quite overwhelming. But there was one theme across the entire board. We need capital. We need capital. We need capital. That was it. You know, and that's how the idea and the start of Affinity began.
Perfect. So now that we're here, for the sake of my listeners, I want you to tell us some of the unique investment products Affinity offers, especially for young entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. And because I love my preambles, I hope you don't mind, Rev. I want to tell you a bit about why Affinity is very important as well, too. And these stats existed 10 years ago, and they haven't really changed so far. You know, there have been tons of amazing products that have come out there and companies that have come out there helping in the ecosystem. And what we do at Affinity is actually bring it all together as a platform. So there are 400 million adults in sub-Saharan Africa that don't have a bank account. In Ghana, that's 11 million people. It's quite a lot of people as well, too. There's a huge opportunity when it comes to lending. It's about $9 billion in Ghana, $9 billion. Can you imagine that? And there's a chunk of the population that sits sort of between microfinance and commercial banking that we're focusing on as Affinity. And these are small businesses and individuals. And what we're designing is we're designing products for them that are affordable. So if you take a look at basically our products, and we have 3 products on the account side. We have our daily account, and that is a transactional account that you can use on a daily basis. It does what it says on the tin, right? On that product, we have 0 fees, so no monthly fees. And we provide interest on that account as well, too.
And so 0 charges to maintain it, and then you still give them interest
Absolutely.
on that.
So the principle at Affinity is we never take money away from you. We help you grow your money.
We add money to your money.
100%. And that's what a bank should be doing as well, too. And that's very important. We have interoperability with MTN, with Moral Money, etc. as well, too. So you can do transfers. You know, you always have access to your money with us as well. That's the second thing that's very important. We make it very convenient for you and very accessible. So to open an account with us, it's less than 5 minutes. You need your Ghana card, a phone number registered in your name, and your GPS address, and that's it.
That's basically it.
Yeah, that's it.
No charges.
No charges, and interest, please.
And
So we have 3 products on the account side. So we have our daily account, which obviously, as I said, it's our transactional account to use on a daily basis for your day-to-day operations. And we have a growth account, and that's your savings product. So at the moment, it's 10% interest on that account, which is great. And we also have our investment products, which we call our future account. So if you're saving for the future, if you're saving for school fees, for that TV that you want, or that holiday you want, or for stocking your shop as well too, it's a 3-month product, 3 months, 6 months, or 1 year as well too.
Perfect. You mentioned savings. Such a tough task for young people these days. Income levels keep reducing. The financial system in Ghana is changing. Things are not like they used to be no more. What's Affinity's outlook for the future? I mean, what are some of the strategic plans in place beyond the current situation? To still be able to foster good habits when it comes to saving, to safeguard our future towards things that may come up. What are some of the plans Affinity has in order to keep us still in the business of saving and making other financial decisions, looking at the current situations around salaries and income, pretty much.
Absolutely. So the one thing I wanted to say is that there's always hope.
Okay.
Because without it, then it's a futile exercise anyway.
I like that.
And all countries, all economies are cyclical. You have your good times and your bad times. It just so happens that on our continent, those cycles are much shorter than in the rest of the world. But things are changing, and we can touch a bit on the element of youth as well too, because I know you mentioned that we have a very young population here on the continent, and it's important to find jobs for them as well too. But in terms of advice on the savings side, it is tough, especially in difficult environments like this. But set yourself a goal. It doesn't have to be much.
Yeah.
The first thing I would say is hopefully bank with us. Please do. And if not, whoever you bank with, basically. The first thing I would say is set yourself a savings target. And it doesn't have to be much. The average savings rate in the global north is about 10%. Start off, if you can't afford it, 5%.
5% is good.
Look, the money's always there for you, right? No one's taking it away from you. But the first thing I would say is make sure that wherever you put your money, it grows. That's the first thing, okay? That 5 CDs that you put aside, a month, or 50 CDs, or whatever that 5% is for you, basically, make sure that it never gets less than it is. That's the first tip. The second tip is that there are very different accounts. So, for us, we have our daily account, which you use on a daily basis, which you probably will put most of your salary in there. Make sure that that never goes down in terms of deductions and fees and transaction costs and all that. That's the first thing I would say. Be clever about that. Be financially literate about it. Ask questions as well, too, from whoever it is that's providing you that service. The second thing is create a pot, target, and goal. Remember, that savings isn't for anyone but for yourself, right? What do you want? What do you want in life? Do you want to start a business? Do you want to save for a holiday?
You want to buy a car?
Do you want to buy a car? Exactly. Whatever it is. What is the down payment for the car? If that down payment for the car is X, then think to yourself, I'll put 1/100th of X away every month, and in 100 months, okay, maybe that's a long time. That's like 10 years. Whatever. You know what I mean?
But
that
it's
kind of
still
structure.
reasonable.
Exactly. And then if you're earning interest, like you do with us as well too, shameless plug there, for let's say a future account or whatever, then at least you know that you're getting closer. So instead of it being 100X, it could be 90X as well too, and that's important.
The interest will just pay that,
Absolutely.
difference in there.
Absolutely.
I have a message in here from Elikem Sanaya. Elikem says, Tarek is not only young at heart, but has an amazing heart, always pushing his team to achieve and be the best to do their best. He's an achiever, one of the most amazing humans you can ever meet, and an inspirational boss. He never gives up. Please, can you ask Tarek to slow down a bit? Feedback from a couple of people here is they can't hear the brothel. No be easy. Guys, so how we go do no be easy.
Are you sure that wasn't my mother? Because my mother always tells me, I can't understand you, slow down.
So you know what? For the first time, I might have to just justify and apologize on behalf of my guests because of the time. Because Tarek has so much to share with us. We decided to fast forward the speech 1.5 at 1.5 pace. So we apologize. What you can do is, after the streaming, just get on Facebook. The video will be there. Take your time and slow. This is a trick. Slow the broadcast 1.5 and you catch it. It works. Yeah, that's just by the way. Yeah. Tarek, so let's talk about, let's pause a bit, okay? I want to ask you a few questions about your thoughts on leadership and success and all that. Very particular about success, but if you're not busy doing all these things, what do you do? How do you lay your hair down? How do you unwind? If you're having a busy week, what do you have to do for fun? I wish I could talk to your personal person here, but I want to hear from you. What is fun for you? What is entertainment for you if you're not busy working?
It's a very good question, and at the moment, unfortunately, it's all working. But having good people like Amanda around me and the team that I work with, over time, the idea is that I can obviously spend less time working till midnight and just diversifying as well to a bit with the time that I spend. The one thing I wanted to say is sports. It's very important to me, so I still keep fit even though I don't race anymore. It's good for my mental health. It's good for maintaining a positive attitude when it comes especially to problem solving. The other thing is that Ghana and the continent at large has a very creative, a very vibrant creative industry. And as much as I can, I also support a lot of young artists, and they give me energy. Our customers give me energy. You see parts of yourself as an entrepreneur in other people. It doesn't really matter if you're selling plantains on the side of the road, or if you're painting in a studio, or if you run a radio company. It still is entrepreneurship, and those systems and merits are the same. The other thing I wanted to say is you're always picking up skills. You never stop learning. As long as you keep on putting yourself in a position that makes you uncomfortable and you challenge yourself, you will never ever stop learning. So last year I was very, very grateful because I got nominated to be a Tutu Fellow.
Yeah.
So the Archbishop Tutu in 2006 set up this fellowship program with over 200 fellows now, so they pick about 10 people each year. I was nominated last year by a very an incredible Tutu fellow that's based out in Nigeria, who runs a book publishing company. So again, in the creative space. She nominated me, and I kind of thought to myself, I don't have the time for this. You know, I have to do a workshop in South Africa and then go to Oxford as well too. What are you talking about? But it was the most eye-opening experience you can imagine. And honestly, it felt like I had a ceiling in my life, and I had hit it, and I didn't realize it was there. And what the fellowship program did, and this leadership program did, is it actually told me, yes, I'm a natural and I'm a good leader, but you only have a set number of tools, and you can always acquire new tools as well too. And this is back to your audience, because we do have a very young population on our continent. There are various forms of leadership. You know, you have thought leaders, people who have lots of ideas. I think I kind of fit in that category. You have people leaders who are really good at managing and leading teams. You've got process leaders, people who are very operationally driven. For us as an organization at Affinity, we need all of those people.
Together.
You do. You know, you can't succeed on your own. So that's the first sort of lesson that I learned. The second two is you need to know your values. So back to that as well too. So I remember the first part of the program, it was sort of it was specifically focused on lead self. So you're leading yourself. What do you stand for as a person? You know, what are your values? And it doesn't mean that they're good and bad values. It's personal values. You know, and your values, Rev, might be different to mine. I need to respect them. You respect mine. And we lead, you know, side by side as well too. So that was sort of the first step. And so just taking that back to Affinity, in the earlier days when I was still living with my parents, I was using a terrible knocked up car. I was driving around doing my own research. I needed to understand what I stood for and what success looked like for me. And that was very important. What is the end goal for Affinity? And I had to keep my eye on the prize there. And that helped define the journey that I went on. And every single time anything went wrong, I would always refer back to that moment and remind myself why. And that was very important. So that first category was around leading yourself. The second category, which is sort of the process that I'm in at the moment, is lead others. Because again, we're an organization. You can't build a bank on your own, right? You need other people to be there. And luckily, other leaders will buy into your vision and your dream, like Amanda, who I keep referring to, only because she's here. We have amazing leaders within the organization. We have an amazing tech team that's led by my colleague, Andrew. We've got an amazing CEO, AJ, an amazing head of finance, Rex, an amazing people and cultural leader, Doreen, as well too, a head of risk as well, Gifty, Amy, our customer experience person. I'm naming everyone, and I hope when I go to the office this afternoon, they're not upset for the people who I haven't named. But what's very interesting here is they bought into this vision of Affinity. They're leading alongside me. And what's very important as well, too, is I learn from them on a daily basis. And that's incredibly important. So for that, it came as a bit of a surprise. All of a sudden, I looked around, and you've got a team of 100 people. You know, I was like, where on earth did all these people come from? And why have they bought into the vision of Affinity? And you realize that it was like for like values. And that was very, very, very important. And then the third and final stage of sort of like leadership is when you start leading systems. And that's sort of taking it a step back, you know, trying to understand how we impact the overall ecosystem as Affinity. So going beyond the team, but the impact that we're having with our customers, the impact that we're having with the policies that are being developed on our continent as well too. Because I remember in the UK, when the financial crisis hit, the regulator did a lot of consultations with the financial institutions and redeveloped the regulation as well too. So it was a way in which the ecosystem, from the regulator to the service providers to the customers, they played a role. And as a result of that, now there are a lot of digital banks that you find in the UK as a result of the policies that deliver there. And that's sort of the third iteration, I would say, in leadership. So for all the young leaders out there, and when I say young, I don't mean by age, but it's the stage of your leadership career. These are sort of the things that you must be aware of and listen to as you develop and you progress.
I love that. I promise this will be my last question.
Go for it.
So in a room filled with 10 successful individuals, okay, the meaning of success would definitely differ from person to person. We've mentioned it a few times. You mentioned that on paper it might be successful, but the other sides to it. What is your definition of success? I think that would be my last question. How do you define success?
I think I'll go back to what my mom did for me, and I know she had an obligation as a blood relative, but at the end of the day, she gave me support for me to flourish and succeed. So I think for me, as success personally, as a leader, is to develop future leaders. And if you look at it within the organization, it's giving my colleagues a path to become CEO of the organization, making sure that I don't create a blockage or a ceiling for them, to actually encourage them to come through and to shine. For our customers, it's for them from going from borrowing 100 CDs from us to 10,000 CDs.
10,000 and being able to pay. Yeah.
Exactly, because that's growth as well too. You know, and these micro enterprises and these SMEs as well too are leaders. You know, they're entrepreneurs, and them going from having 2 employees to 20 employees. That's a version of my success.
Or having 9 people show up and having 400 people show up.
Exactly, exactly. You know, it's about sending the elevator back down, you know, and making sure that, yes, I fought very hard to be in the position that I'm in, and I'm very, very privileged, and I'm lucky, and I keep on reminding myself that on a daily basis. And for me, what gives me the most joy and what I define as success is helping others also get there. Because, look, we come from a scarcity mindset a lot, and we should move away from that. And there's enough of the pie in our country to go around for everyone as well, too. And that's important.
Wow. I think we have a good note to wrap up. Thank you so much. How easy was this?
I mean,
Seamless,
it was great.
right?
Other than that complaint that I spoke too quickly, I hope I was
We've
okay
done
in
a
that
whole
second
hour.
half.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Really? A whole hour?
I've given them the remedy. You know, just go back and slow down a bit. You catch everything. But thank you so much, Tarek Mouganie from Affinity, for spending time with us this morning. I will make arrangements so we can have you here in a different capacity. Of course, I want to hear more on how we can empower young people, how we can create opportunities for young people here in Ghana. That's what it's about. I mean, and you really find young people. It's not by age, but by the stage at which you find yourself in whatever it is that you want to achieve. And so thank you so much. And before I let you go, this is not a question. You love music, right?
I do.
What are your 5 favorite songs now from Ghana here?
Are you going to play something for me now?
Yeah, we can.
Anything
Why
by
not?
Thames would be great.
Anything by Thames, okay. So play that one and wrap with it. Thank you so much. Any final words you'd like to add? Anybody you'd like to say thank you to again?
I just want to say thank you to you, Rav, for having me here. It's been really, really fun, and it's been very easy talking to you. So I look forward to coming back and telling you more about my journey. And I also want to thank all our customers as well too. You know, we've got 22,000 so far, and super, super happy for them to have supported us. And I hope you continue to grow with us. I hope you continue to give us feedback as well too, so we can keep on developing products for you as well too. So I'm very grateful for that. Thank you so much.